Well, welcome back. Second segment of the TD show this morning. We had a lot to talk about, talking about the deals that have been made in Major League Baseball this week, and actually the past couple weeks, I guess. Kind of ran over. TJ's got a few things he'd like to touch on, talking about the Reds and what they're doing to change up their strategy that he thinks is going to shake up the entire league and the way that baseball is played and managed throughout the whole United States, not just in the small town of Cincinnati, Ohio.
Right. One of the best things happened to the Reds immediately following the season that could have happened to them and letting go of Dusty Baker. I mean, no, I don't like to see people get fired. But
no,
I mean,
and he was a former Brave at one point, so I had a little bit of allegiance to him. But I thought he was an idiot the past 3 years or so.
And the guy that I, from the very get-go, that I said wanted to get hired and that I thought would get hired, got hired. So I was ecstatic. And Brian Price, the old pitching coach.
You weren't after Tony La Russa?
No.
You weren't on that train?
No. Brian Price had been the best pitching coach in the game for some time, what he was doing with the Red staff in that ballpark. So I was more than happy to see him get promoted to manager. And what I believe he's going to do, it's been talked about a little bit. I mean, nothing official. But what you're going to see this year from the Reds bullpen that you've never seen before in baseball since the addition of what you would call the closer, I guess, in the 80s, is that if you have your 3, 4, 5 opposing hitters coming up in the 8th inning, or say you've got a left-handed closer in Chapman and you've got 2 lefties coming up in the 8th and no lefties left on the bench and there's going to be 3 right-handers coming up in the 9th, you're going to see Chapman come in to face those hitters in the 8th and then have Broxton or Marshall or whoever in the 9th left to deal with 6th, 7th, 8th.
Yeah, and I see what you're saying. I've always been kind of a baseball fundamentalist, kind of an old school guy. And I know that the closer isn't exactly old school, but it's older than me.
Well, I mean, it started with Eckersley in the 80s. That's what I was going to say.
It started with Eckersley. I actually just looked that up to make sure there wasn't somebody before him because I didn't want to say it wrong.
Right.
But I do like what you're saying because one of the things, see, I got Fox Sports Ohio, and so I watched the Reds a lot. I've always been a Braves fan, but I got to watch just about every one of the Reds games.
Right.
So I kind of started liking them, following them closely, even though I wasn't necessarily rooting for them all the time. But what would frustrate the heck out of me is when Dusty Baker would bring in, would have maybe one out left with the left-handed guy coming up, and he wouldn't bring in Chapman. When you know that he could get that out and still have gas and take it.
Especially last year when he had prepared the offseason to be a start.
I know.
Right.
And so I see what you're saying. And so I've been trying to come up with a rebuttal because I don't know, just to see. All I can think of is what if someone sees you bring in your closer and then puts in 4 or 3 pinch hitters after that. Can you not have what would happen in that situation? Say you bring in Chapman in the 8th.
Mm-hmm. Against a 3-4-5.
3-4-5.
Mm-hmm.
And they pinch hit 3 power right-handers against him in the 9th.
Here's the thing. Whoever they're pitch hitting isn't going to be as good as the 3-4-5 hitters.
That's
and
true.
It don't matter as much with him as some if they're left-handed or right-handed. I mean, that's the reason he's the closer. He can get out left-handed or right. I mean, the majority of the time he's going to be getting out right-handed hitters anyways. So, and the thing is, saves and wins and losses for a pitcher are completely overrated. They're a team stat. If it's more important to win the game, so forget if your closer's getting a save. Do the most important thing and win the game.
Yeah, I'm with you in that I don't care necessarily how many saves pitchers get. What I do think is an incredibly important stat is blown saves.
Exactly. Save percentage or blown saves is huge.
Exactly. Is a big stat.
Whether you're a closer, whether you're the middle relief man, or you're coming in the 4th inning, whenever.
Right. And I can see the argument for this and why you would want to do this. I just think that there is something about even maybe more so a mental side of the game than anything, especially like when it's the 9th inning, or I guess it'd be the top of the 9th inning, and the Braves are at home. They bring bring in Kimbrel, and they got the music, and they say, "Release the Kimbrel," kind of like that.
Well, with that being said, if you're a closer, you want to go against the best. You want to get up to go against the best. So you're going to get up in that 8th inning to go throw against Fielder, Cabrera, and a 3-4-5.
And I think that it's going to be 5 years minimum before this is an accepted theory.
Yes.
Because I think that people are going to have to get used to it. Closers themselves are going to have to get used to it. They're going to have to understand, look,
it's taking 10 years to get replay.
That's true. Well, it's taking a lot longer than that.
10 years since,
it's been viable. Right. That being said, I don't have a problem with it, and I do see what you're saying, and I do think that it is going to be a change that's going to be made eventually. I just don't think it's going to be widespread, implemented as widespread as you think it will. Baseball is not like football or like basketball in that you almost have to copycat a little bit in those sports to be able to win. You almost have to pick up on those strategies, or else you're going to be left in the dark. And while I think that the traditional route of using your closer at the end of the game will still win games in baseball, it just might not win as many games. I don't think it's going to catch on real quickly.
Right. It would probably only save you at max 8 games in baseball, 162 games. But 8 games could be huge.
Oh yeah, especially in NL Central.
Right.
8 games could be a very big deal in NL Central when you've got the Pirates who've been playing good for some reason.
Yeah.
You've got the Cardinals and you've got the Reds all in that division there. 8 games could be a very big deal in the NL Central, and a very big deal for prizing the Reds.
Right. And I'm going to get off my red soapbox here in just a second, but I want to speak about one more thing. They announced this week that Billy Hamilton will be the starting day center fielder and leadoff hitter for the Reds, which it will play a huge role in how successful they are. You had Chu last year, who had an unbelievable breakout season.
And then they lost him. But we knew Billy Hamilton was coming. We've been knowing he's coming for 3 years.
And they even changed his position from shortstop to center field because they knew they'd have Cozart and knew they probably wouldn't have Chu. So we know that there's no power there. But if he can get on base, we saw last year him affect 3 games in the last 2 weeks of the season.
Yeah, we saw him get on base and then turn that into 2 and 3 steals.
Right.
And he, if nothing else, that pitcher knew he was there. We saw pitchers looking at him more than they looked at the plate while he was on base.
Right. I think the on-base percentage for the Reds' leadoff hitter last year was about .310, which I believe was bottom 5 in baseball. And they were a pretty successful team. So if Hamilton can just have an OBP of .350, bat 270, 260, not blow out the world or anything, not do what Chu did, but with his ability to steal bases, if he can just get on base that much, Reds could win 100 games easy.
They've always been successful, and outside of Votto, they didn't have huge on base percentages.
No, I mean Phillips when he bats in certain places. I was going to say Phillips, right? But he's on the decline, obviously, with offense and defense. He's not somebody you can count on. But somebody else on the way up, I think, is still Bruce, who's getting more discipline.
Okay.
Not necessarily his power, but his discipline.
I'm going to say Bruce is probably on the incline, the decline as far as physical power.
Right.
But as far as having a mind for the game, this was a kid that like Homer Bailey, came in incredibly highly touted. Best player in the minor leagues for 2 years in a row. Minor league MVP 2 years in a row. They came into the majors and it had a great. He came in and was so good that he's been a top 50 player the past 3 or 4 years, but he hasn't been as phenomenal as he was the first couple of years. So he hasn't got the attention that's needed. But I do agree and think that he could. He can get on base a lot more than he does.
Right. The most telltale thing I remember with Bruce over the past 2 years is in Game 5 against the Giants 2 years ago in the playoffs, after they'd been up 2-0, then fell 2-2, he was batting the last out and fouled off about 8 or 10 pitches. Nobody wanted that more than he did, and he had the discipline to not chase, to take the balls and foul off pitches that were strikes, but weren't a pitch that he could do something with.
He could drive somewhere with. I agree with you, and that's sort of what we're seeing out of Votto, who still does have power, but he's always had power, always been able to hit home runs, but has now got this mentality of, I don't care how I get on base, I'm going to get on base.
Right. I mean, well, you don't want a guy swinging at 4 balls to get on base.
Exactly.
And that something Dusty Baker harped on that I believe Brian Price will have a much different attitude towards. He wanted him to swing at balls. I mean,
well, you remember Red's former first baseman, who was a strikeout king in the MLB for a few years.
Who was that?
You don't remember? He'd either hit a home run or a strikeout. Adam Dunn.
Oh, Adam Dunn. Yeah, I forget about him playing first base. I was remembering him as an outfielder.
Oh, yeah. He did play outfield most of the time.
But then they had another first baseman that was a lot like Joey Votto, not near as good, Sean Casey, who never struck out and had a high on-base percentage. The mayor.
Without the power of that Joey Votto has.
Right. And there was a lot of talk after the knee surgery, that Votto didn't have the power that he did before the knee surgery.
But he hasn't needed it.
Right. And I don't even think that it's that he doesn't have it. He just doesn't get the pitches that he used to.
Right.
Even though Bruce is getting better and Phillips is still a good player, there's no need to throw him a ball ever over the middle of the plate.
And once again, like I said, this is the new Major League Baseball. This is the post-steroid Major League Baseball. Before, you would throw those balls down the middle because you knew you had a guy that could hit it just as far as they could.
Right.
You would take that chance of getting that power for power, match it up. Now it's finesse for finesse, power when you need it. It's kind of like driving a Ferrari versus driving just a straight drag car. A top fuel dragster has nothing but power. A Ferrari or some kind of high class sports car, you can take the curves, you can cruise in it. When you need to step on it and use all 600 horses, they're there. And that's kind of how Votto's been playing lately. But before we go off the Reds, I got a question for you.
Okay.
Well, what is Brandon Phillips' future? What do you think is going to happen with that? We heard that he wanted out. We've now heard that's not true. I think it was true, and he just doesn't want to say it now that he's stuck there for a little while. Well, what's going to happen? I don't know that they can pay him.
I said the wild card with this team was Billy Hamilton. Maybe there's 2 wild cards. Maybe there's Billy Hamilton and Brandon Phillips. And not only his production that we've saw declining, which it needs to pick up, but you had the rumors that he was trying to get traded to the Yankees. It fell through, and then supposedly he told his agent, "Get this deal done, whatever
get me out of town, whatever it takes." Yeah,
right. And we saw that it fell through again. Then it came out that all that wasn't true, and now it's being said that he won't even speak to the media. And we know right after the Votto signing, he came out and had disgruntlement over his contract not being good enough. He wanted to get paid because Votto got paid. And rightly so. I mean, at that time, he was probably top 3 second baseman in the game, if you include how good his glove is. And then he was stealing 20, hitting 20 home runs. And now you have, after this Homer Bailey deal, him not talking to the media, which I have no clue what would be going on there. So, I mean, if he's going to be a headache like this all year, it could really hurt the team. But here's the thing. Brian Price will take care of it. He will get something done, as opposed to Dusty Baker, who sat there and laughed as he was cussing out Trent, the beat reporter from Cincinnati.
Yeah, here's the thing. The best players in Major League Baseball history, if you think about them, you think about the best players in the game right now, have never came out and asked for money. They've been given their money. They knew they were going to get their money.
Right.
When you start asking for money, saying you need more money, there's a mental disconnect between you and the game.
But to speak to Phillips, if I can, I believe the reason that he asked for that money is because he was afraid that he would have to go somewhere else to get it. And to his credit, he wants to be in Cincinnati.
Yeah, he is. I mean, he's still a fan favorite, even with all the problems.
Until the problems happened, he wanted to be in Cincinnati. That's where he wanted to call home. And maybe Dusty Baker getting knocked out, he knew he'd lose some of his cushion, and that's why he wanted to get to New York or somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I wanted to have your take on it. I hadn't really talked to you about it. Thought we'd see. Now, like I said, the game is changing. You just talked about how Price is going to change the way the game is managed. And I think, as we've seen with the Braves, they're changing the way that deals are going to be done, locking up their young talent like that ahead of time, prior to arbitration. Not letting them get to arbitration, putting up this money up front, kind of gambling on it. I'd call it investing it. I mean,
Right.
you have investments, and sometimes they don't pay off. It's
That's
not
exactly
a
what
big
it
gamble.
is.
It's not bringing in a guy from Cuba that you've never seen before. You kind of know what you've got, and you hope it works. And I think this is going to be the way of the future. Now I think that the Braves are ahead on this one. Maybe Price is 5 years ahead on how he's going to in-game manage.
Right.
I think the Braves are 5 or 6 years ahead on how they're managing their player personnel. I think it's going to be great for them. I think they're going to get 3 or 4 pennants out of that deal, maybe a World Series title or 2 before it's all said and done.
They definitely have the talent that they should win the division next year. I don't think if they don't win the division, it's a disappointment.
Exactly, 100% agree with that.
Go ahead.
No, I'm good. That's about all I've got in Major League Baseball.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Just to move to college football for just a second. Last week we talked about the proposed Nick Saban rule, him calling the committee meeting, talking about how we needed to institute a rule to where the offense couldn't snap the ball for 10 seconds because the game was becoming too fast-paced and leading to injuries. Well, we've kind of seen since then, since the uproar, the old ball coach came out and he called it the Saban rule this week. And we've basically seen, maybe the guys on the committee started thinking, you know what, maybe we should see if there's some statistics or something behind this.
Before we just say, all right, Nick, whatever you say.
Right. And kudos to Nick to trying to get an advantage or whatever, but he's not going to get it this time.
No, and I think that Saban is a smart enough coach and good enough coach to be able to figure it out.
Right.
He's what my point was last week, that he knows it's going to take him 2 years because he stays 2 years ahead. He knows who's going to be playing on his team 2 years before it happens. He knows it's going to take him 2 years. I think he was trying to buy those years. He knew that was going to get overturned, but he was looking for any advantage he could get. I still think he'll figure it out. I can't believe I don't know what to say about the whole situation. But talking about coaches and talking about all the trades, what about now Harbaugh's came out and said this wasn't true,
right?
But there were some reports that Cleveland had offered up 4 draft picks. I think 2 of them were first-round draft picks, and I don't remember how much money, but there's $8 million, $3 million, something to the 49ers for Harbaugh, and then Harbaugh stepped in and said, "No, I'm not going to Cleveland. I don't know what you're talking about."
If he has a say-so in it, he ain't going to Cleveland.
No.
If anybody has a say-so in it, they ain't going to Cleveland.
Exactly.
I mean, kind of like with Johnny Manziel, I was talking. If you get drafted by Cleveland or Jacksonville, just retire. Go play baseball.
You want him to go to Jacksonville.
I'm sorry.
Cleveland or Oakland.
Cleveland or Oakland.
Right.
Yeah,
and they've got the 4th pick in the draft, and I think they've got the 26th pick in the draft.
And, maybe if you're Harbaugh somewhere in you, they'd be losing those draft picks.
Yeah.
Never.
No.
Yeah.
There's nothing there.
No.
There's no reason to
If
go.
if you don't even have the draft picks.
Yeah. I could see where a team would want to do it, but no. A team would want to give up their coach for the draft picks.
Yes.
But that being said, I think that if you're going to pick a sport where the coach is actually valuable enough to be traded for picks, it would be football.
Right.
I don't think in basketball it matters as much. In baseball it matters a little, but not enough to give up prime picks, first-round picks.
Right.
I don't think it matters anywhere but football.
But do you think it matters enough in football to give up 4 picks? What's Harbaugh going to do with that team that's there?
Well, it wouldn't matter.
Right.
Yeah. That being said, is there someone that, if you had 1 first-round draft pick and could trade them for a coach, who would you trade him for?
Well, what team am I?
Any team.
Well, it makes a difference.
You're a team that needs a coach.
So I'm probably not any good anyway.
You're going to be, this is a bad example. I'm going to say we're not going to be Cleveland because we know they're terrible. We're going to be the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Okay. And I can trade for 1 coach.
You can trade for any coach.
And I need a coach that can coach special teams, defense, and offense because all mine are terrible.
You need a coach to win. You need a coach to bring in a whole new staff and win new ball games. And you're going to trade for a coach. Who would you trade for?
Here's the thing. I don't think it has to do with necessarily knowledge of the game, because no matter how much knowledge you have, you're not going to make that team a whole lot better. I believe it's got to be a coach that can coach people up.
Also, in Jacksonville, you got to get a big name coach because you've got to get people in the stands.
You know who I think?
Who?
Pete Carroll. I think you bring in Pete Carroll.
I can't disagree with that comment.
I mean, you've got to kind of have a coach that's not going to be negative, because there's going to be too much negativity there to begin with.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say like a prime, still coaching John Gruden.
Yeah, exactly. It's on the same exact line. If you listen to John Gruden call a game now, everybody's great.
Exactly.
That's a great running back right there.
Exactly.
That's a great play call by that RC.
That's who I think that, and he was actually a coach that was traded for. Tampa Bay Buccaneers gave a first-round draft pick and $8 million to the Oakland Raiders to get John Gruden to come be their coach. And I would make that deal again if I was a team like Jacksonville that could turn things around with the coach, or if I was a team like maybe Detroit that has so much talent, but for whatever reason isn't getting it done, I would make that deal.
Right, but you'd almost have to be trading to a team that's not any good, too. I mean, a real good team is not going to give up their coach.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Well, John Gruden's not doing anything, but he likes what he's doing. He's not coming back. Well, how much? We got 3 more minutes. What do you want to talk about for 3 minutes before the break?
3 minutes. Let's go to Sochi.
Okay.
The Olympics are almost over. See if you can pull up the medal count there. We'll give the listeners the medal count. Last I saw, the USA was in the lead by 1 medal.
Yeah. While we're looking at the medal count, both the USA men's and women's hockey teams lost to Canada. USA women's got the silver medal.
The men are going for the bronze.
Are going for the bronze today against Finland.
And also, just talking about the hockey aspect of it, really surprising that Russia doesn't qualify for a medal.
Not at all. And I don't know.
And Alex Ovechkin scores the first goal there of the Olympics in the first 2 minutes, and then never scores another one. Regarded as one of the top 3 players in the NHL. And
yes, probably the top 2. At one point, he was regarded as maybe the best player in the
him and Crosby.
1-2.
Right. And a big thing with that is there's been a lot of talk that this will be the last year with NHL players in the Olympics. Right. So, this could probably be one of the best products we see in the Olympics for a long time.
Exactly. And
not necessarily the best, because, the Miracle on Ice wasn't with NHL players. Right. You can still have a good storyline and a good
it was, game. But the United States didn't use NHL players.
Right. So, it can still be good quality programming. You just won't see the stars that you know.
Right. And the Olympics is all about the storyline more so than the sport.
Exactly.
At least the Winter Olympics.
And it always draws a higher number than the Stanley Cup does anyway.
Exactly. That's a patriotism thing in that.
Right.
But that being said, if they had won gold, I think it could have caused an upswing in the popularity of hockey in the United States.
Absolutely.
You saw that in the 80s when it was Miracle on Ice. And I think that hockey does have room to grow in the United States.
I still believe with the success that they had in the hockey and the Olympics being talked about because it's the last year of NHL players,
right,
there could be a minor swing in the amount of hockey consumption in the United States.
Yeah, and even in Bowling Green, they have roller hockey now. They have a pretty actually well-established league.
Is that right?
Multiple teams that play outdoor roller hockey, which seems more dangerous than indoor hockey to me because you're falling on concrete.
Yeah.
I've never actually watched it or been a part of it, but I know it's there. But looking at the medal count, total medals, the United States has 27.
It looks like Russia's won 2.
Russia has the most with 28.
Yeah.
They had 26 yesterday when I was looking. Norway has 11 golds. Russia has 10 golds. Canada has 9. The United States have 9. So we're 2 off the lead. And we have a couple opportunities left to win gold in these next 2 days.
Right, I believe 9 totals. The 9 golds we won last year, but last year I believe we won 36 total medals.
Yeah, we won the most total medals ever in the Olympics with 36.
So it looks like we could do better on our gold count than last year, but it'd be hard to catch up with our total.
Part of the problem this year was that our men's speed skating team kind of fell off the map. Last year they dominated. Apollo Ono and the rest of the team won just about every event or medal in every event, and they haven't won an event. They've won one. I'm sorry. I apologize. They got a bronze medal, I think, in the men's 1500 on the short track, and that's the only speed skating event we've won, and that's where we got about 8 or 9 medals last year. That's the difference. We still have an opportunity to take on the most medals. We can get a hockey medal today and a couple more skiing opportunities. So we'll let you know next week how it all pans out.
Right. I believe Monday is the last day.
Ceremony is on Monday. That's correct. Sunday, I think, is the actual last day of competition.
If you're listening to us on Spreaker, or if you're listening to the audio on the live feed page of the tdshow.com, be sure to refresh your browser about 5 minutes after we come back from the break. If you're watching us live, which if you're not doing, you should do on the live feed page at the tdshow.com, you'll get a little behind-the-scenes view of what goes on in between the breaks. And when we come back, we'll talk Daytona 500, Austin Dillon driving the number 3 car. I'll give you my guarantee for the week, and we'll also talk UNC storming the floor at Duke.
And much more.